Today, we are pulling back the curtain on 7 cheap sausage brands in Australia that are stuffed with fillers, starches and additives and barely resemble real meat. For years, we have been sold the story that a sausage is simply beef, a bit of fat and some herbs on the barbecue, but the reality on the label looks very different. Under Australian food standards, a sausage only has to contain 50% fat-free meat flesh, with the rest legally made up of fat, water, cereal fillers and other additives, and typical supermarket sausages test at meat content in the low 70s, fat in the mid to high teens per 100 grams, and sodium in the hundreds of milligrams. At the same time, health authorities in Australia and around the world class processed meats, including sausages, as foods to limit because regular high intake is clearly linked with a higher risk of bowel cancer over time. So when you grab the absolute cheapest tray of barbecue beef sausages for a family cook-up, you are not just saving a few dollars. You are buying into an ultra-processed meat product that many experts say is best eaten rarely and with your eyes wide open. Let us go through 7 of the worst offenders and then talk about the sausages in Australia that are actually worth your money. Number 1. Coles thin beef barbecue sausages, 70% beef, 30% everything else. These are the classic budget sausages at Coles. Big tray, low price, perfect for just cook a few on the barbecue. The ingredient list, pulled from label data, looks like this. No added hormone Australian beef, 70%. Water, rice flour, salt, mineral salt 451, preservative 223, sulphites, hydrolyzed maize protein, dextrose, vegetable powders, onion and garlic, spice extracts and spices, rosemary extract, edible beef collagen casing. So almost a third of what you are paying for is not meat at all. It is water, starch, flavor enhancers, sugar and sulfite preservative. So why is this a problem? Because on the tray and in the catalogue, all you see is beef barbecue sausages. Australian beef. What that really means is beef padded out with cheap rice flour, mineral salt 451, which is a phosphate salt used as a water-binding agent and texture improver, preservative 223, which is sodium metabisulfite that some people are sensitive to, hydrolyzed maize protein as a flavor enhancer made from broken-down corn protein, and a hit of dextrose, a simple sugar for browning and taste. In the pan, you see it. They release watery fat, they shrink, and they can leave that sticky, salty residue on the tray. If you have ever grabbed whatever is cheapest at Coles for a children's birthday or a charity sausage sizzle, you have probably eaten this exact type of mix without realizing just how much of it is not actually beef. And if you think Woolworths must be doing it differently, number 2 is going to sting. Number 2, Woolworths Aussie beef sausages, supermarket sausage in a lab coat. Woolworths Aussie beef sausages are the green label value tray you see in almost every store. They lean on Aussie beef and price to win you over. Here is the ingredients list. Australian beef, 72%, water, rice flour, maize flour, salt, potato starch, mineral salts 450, 451, 452. Spices and onion powder, hydrolyzed vegetable protein from maize, preservative 223, sugar, yeast extract, natural flavor, spice extracts and natural color from paprika oleorescens, anti-caking agent 341, humectant 422, edible collagen casing. So again, you have around 28% non-meat ingredients, mostly cereal flours, starches, salt, and a whole suite of additives and flavor enhancers. A few red flags: 450, 451, and 452 are phosphate mineral salts that help bind water and improve texture, and they keep cheap sausages bouncy instead of crumbly. Hydrolyzed vegetable protein is another way to boost savory flavor and mask the blandness of all that starch. 223 again is a sulphite preservative. 422 is glycerol as a humectant, helping hold moisture. Choice taste testing and nutrition reviews have shown that supermarket sausages like these often contain around 18 grams of fat per 100 grams and sodium somewhere between about 500 and 700 milligrams per 100 grams. So one decent-sized Woolworths sausage can quietly deliver a big chunk of your recommended daily salt intake, a serious hit of fat, and a whole cocktail of starches and additives, on top of the processed meat risks that organizations like Cancer Council and the World Health Organization already say to limit. The label suggests good value Aussie beef. Underneath, many shoppers feel it is closer to beef-flavored starch tube, engineered to be salty, bouncy and cheap. And if you think, okay, I will just go for the Coles original beef instead, that sounds more legitimate. Number 3 shows how the same playbook keeps popping up. Number 3, Coles, the original beef sausages. Original does not mean simple. Coles sells the original beef sausages as a kind of flagship sausage. Red label, no added hormones, Australian beef. The actual ingredient list is as follows. No added hormone Australian beef, 71%. Water, potato starch, salt, rice flour, mineral salt, 451, dehydrated vegetables, onion and garlic, spices and spice extracts. Flavor, preservative 223, edible beef collagen casing. So once again, you have meat only modestly above the regulatory minimum once you account for fat, plus a mix of starch, flour and water to bulk it out, and the same phosphate and sulphite additives to hold it together and keep it shelf-stable. From a sensory point of view, they can feel oddly spongy inside. They can spit a lot of liquid in the pan, and the flavor relies heavily on salt, dehydrated onion, and spice extracts to taste like barbecue. The word original suggests back to basics, old-school sausage. But the ingredient list reads more like modern industrial recipe designed to hit price points and last in a modified atmosphere tray. If you have ever thought, I am buying mid-range, not the absolute cheapest, so it must be better, this is where that illusion starts to crack. And if you want to see what happens when you go rock bottom on pork, number 4 takes it up a notch. Number 4, Coles British Family Pack Thin Pork Sausages, cheap pork loaded with binders. The British Family Pack Thin Pork Sausages are that big 1 kilogram bag you see in Coles freezers. Massive volume, tiny price per kilo, perfect for bulk curried sausages or feeding a crowd on the cheap. Here are the ingredients. Australian pork, 70%, water, wheat flour, salt, soy protein concentrate, emulsifiers 450 and 451, dextrose, preservative 223, sulphites. So the non-meat 30% is wheat flour as filler, concentrated soy protein and pork fat to boost texture, phosphate emulsifiers to glue it all together, a simple sugar, and sulphite preservative. Visually and in the mouth, that leads to pale, uniform pink sausage meat, a strangely even, almost pasty texture when you bite, and a thick, salty, floury gravy if you cook them in a pan of sauce. So why is this a problem? Because this is where you drift furthest away from chunks of pork in a skin and deep into meat emulsion held together with cereal and processing tricks. Health authorities class processed meats, especially those with added salts and preservatives, as foods to limit because higher steady intake is linked with increased bowel cancer risk. When that processed meat is then padded with refined flour and sugar, you're getting the worst of both worlds. Ultra-processed meat plus cheap, low-nutrient fillers. On the bag it says, family pack, great value. In the pan, it is closer to pork-flavored cereal log, engineered for cost more than quality. And if you think, well, I will just stick to beef, not pork. Number 5 shows how easily the same tricks sneak back in. Number 5. Woolworths traditional beef sausages, traditional with a modern additive twist. Woolworths sells traditional beef sausages as a slightly more butcher-style option. The name sounds old-fashioned. The reality is anything but. Ingredients: beef, 75%, water, rice flour, sorghum, salt, tapioca starch, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, mineral salts 450, 451 and 452, spices and herbs, preservative 223, garlic powder, onion powder and paprika extract, natural hog casing. Yes, you get a bit more meat than the very cheapest options, 75% instead of 70 to 72%. But you also get multiple cereals and starches, a flavor enhancer, phosphate salts and sulphites. In other words, traditional here does not mean just beef, fat, salt and herbs. It means industrial sausage formula with a slightly higher meat number and natural casing. Taste-wise, they are salty, bouncy and crowd-pleasing. Nutritionally, they are still firmly in the processed meat category that Australian dietary guidelines say to keep small and occasional, not nightly. If the word traditional made you picture an old butcher mincing cuts of beef in the back room, this contrast between label and ingredient list is exactly the kind of thing that worries a lot of shoppers. And that is just retail. Wait until you see the sausages being pumped into school canteens and charity barbecues. Number 6. Fundraiser and canteen barbecue sausages, the additives nobody reads. Behind a lot of school fetes, hardware store fundraisers and canteen meals, you will find generic catering sausages from bulk suppliers. Take a typical example: a thin barbecue beef sausage sold under food service brands. Ingredients can include beef, water, rice flour, salt, flavors from spice extracts, preservative 223, mineral salts 451, 452 and 450, color 160C, canola oil, antioxidants 319 and 320, and anti-foam 900. The nutritional panel for similar products has shown sodium around 800 milligrams per 100 grams and roughly 9 or 10 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams, mostly from rice flour and other fillers. This is where you see the pure logic of cheap sausage engineering: starch to bind water and reduce meat costs, phosphates to hold it all together, canola oil to tweak texture, synthetic antioxidants such as 319, also called tertiary butyl hydroquinone, and 320, also called butylated hydroxyanisole, to keep the fats from going rancid in distribution. Regulators have approved these additives as safe at typical intakes, but when you combine processed meat, high salt, added fats and oils, and multiple antioxidants and preservatives, and then feed that regularly to children via canteens and school events, you start to see why many health experts say ultra-processed meats are something to limit sharply. On the fundraising flyer it says, "Sausage sizzle, come support the school." On the back of the box it is closer to beef, starch, phosphate, sulphites, oil, and synthetic antioxidants. Cheap, consistent, profitable. And if you think sausage problems only happen in bulk, number 7 shows that the same filler-heavy formulas turn up even inside proper meals. Number 7, curried sausage meals, hiding mystery meat. Take a ready meal like curried sausages and rice from commercial caterers. The main picture is vegetables, gravy and sliced sausages. The label tells a deeper story. For the sausage component in one such meal, the ingredient list can read as follows. Sausages, making up about 19% of the meal, made from beef and pork, 75%, plus water, rice flour, salt, soy protein, soy fiber, vegetable fiber, yeast extract, mineral salts 450, 451, and 452. Edible casing, spice extracts and preservative 223. You are now at least 2 steps removed from meat. First into the cheap sausage mix itself, then into a sourced frozen meal where that sausage is only a fraction of what is in the tray. So in one comforting home-style dinner, you are getting processed meat, multiple refined fillers and fibers, phosphates, sulphites, and then extra salt, sugar and oils from the sauce and rice on top. The marketing suggests wholesome, nostalgic curried sausages like a grandparent might have made. The fine print looks more like layered, ultra-processed ingredients built for shelf life and catering margins. By this point in the list, a pattern should be obvious. The pattern, this is not one dodgy sausage. It is a whole system. Across Coles, Woolworths, bulk suppliers and catering meals, you keep seeing the same playbook. Meat content hovering around 70 to 75% once fat is included, just above the regulatory minimum. The rest made up of rice flour, wheat flour, maize flour, sorghum, potato or tapioca starch. Multiple mineral salts, numbers 450 to 452, to bind water and keep the texture springy. Hydrolyzed vegetable or maize protein, yeast extract, and vague flavor to boost savory taste. Preservative 223, sulphites, appearing in product after product. High salt and significant fat content per 100 grams. Zoom out further and remember, the Cancer Research Agency of the World Health Organization classifies processed meat as carcinogenic to humans in Group 1, based on sufficient evidence that regular consumption increases the risk of colorectal or bowel cancer. Australian organisations such as Cancer Council and Cancer Australia say there is strong or convincing evidence that eating processed meat increases bowel cancer risk, and they recommend limiting these foods. Health resources on ultra-processed foods list sausages and processed meats as major culprits, high in salt, saturated fat and additives, and offering relatively little nutritional value for the risk they carry. So, when you build weekly meals and children's dinners around the cheapest possible sausages, you are not just being thrifty. You are trading real meat for starch, salt and sugar, phosphates and sulphites, and the kind of processed meat that our own health agencies say to cut back on. This is not about shaming anyone. It is about seeing the quiet drift from butcher's sausage to industrial meat tube for what it is. Now let us flip it. What does a better sausage look like in Australia, and how can you actually find one without going broke? Now let us talk about the sausage options that are actually worth your time. You do not have to give up sausages, you just have to get a lot more selective about which ones you bring home. Here are the moves that actually protect your plate. First, hunt for short ingredient lists. Real sausage does not need much. Meat, a bit of fat, salt, spices, maybe a simple binder like rice flour. When you see meat, rice flour, salt, a single emulsifier, herbs and spices, that is a very different product to a sausage with a dozen lines of codes and fillers. Some Australian butchers are already doing this. For example, preservative-free beef sausages from free range or grass-fed butchers often look like beef, rice flour, salt, a single emulsifier such as 450, and spice extracts, and that is it. Compare that to a supermarket tray with 4 or 5 different starches, 3 mineral salts, sulphites, flavor enhancers, and antioxidants. If you can read the label out loud and it sounds like a recipe instead of a chemistry exam, you are moving in the right direction. Second, shift some of your sausage budget to real butchers and better producers. Yes, butcher sausages usually cost more per kilo than the cheapest supermarket tray, but you do not need to replace every sausage. Many family-run and online butchers in Australia sell sausages that are 80% or more beef, bound with a bit of rice or tapioca, and seasoned with herbs, onion, garlic and yeast extract. Sometimes still using preservative 223, but with far fewer fillers overall. Others go a step further with preservative-free lines that skip sulphites entirely. These are still processed meats, so all the limit processed meat advice still applies. But if you are going to have a sausage night, it makes more sense to eat less, eat better, and know what is actually in the casing. Third, use supermarket labels to reduce the damage when you cannot get to a butcher. Sometimes you are in Coles or Woolworths, and that is your only option. In that situation, use these rules. Aim for sausages with higher meat percentages, closer to 80 to 85% if you can find them, and fewer starches. Avoid anything where flour or starch shows up multiple times or near the top of the list. If there are more than 2 or 3 numbered additives, such as 450 to 452, 223, 319 or 320, put it back and try another pack. Some grass-fed or gourmet supermarket sausages still use sulphites, but rely less on heavy cereal fillers and flavor enhancers. They are not perfect, but they are a clear step up from the absolute bottom-tier trays we have just walked through. Fourth, treat cheap sausages like treats, not weeknight staples. Cancer organizations and the World Health Organization all land in a similar place. Processed meat is something to limit sharply, not build your daily meals around. So if the budget is tight and you still want a sausage, have it less often. Stretch it with real food. Load plates with salad, roast vegetables and beans. Swap some sausage meals for roast chicken pieces, mince patties made at home, or lentil or bean-based dishes. You will automatically reduce overall salt and saturated fat, exposure to sulphites and phosphates, and your reliance on ultra-processed meats. Final message and call to action. The Australian sausage used to be simple. Meat from a local butcher, fat, salt, and a handful of spices. Today, the cheapest supermarket and catering sausages are something else entirely. Shredded meat padded with starch, cereal, and vegetable protein, held together with phosphates, preserved with sulphites, and supercharged with salt, flavor enhancers, and antioxidants. At the same time, our own health agencies are quietly saying that processed meats, including sausages, are a Group 1 carcinogen in the World Health Organization system. That there is strong evidence that more processed meat means more bowel cancer risk, and that Australians should keep these foods to a minimum. We drifted from real butcher's sausages on a Sunday to filler heavy meat tubes on weeknights, in canteens and in frozen meals, sold under words like original, traditional, and family pack. You do not have to be the gullible customer this system is built around. Read one sausage label this week, just one. Count how many ingredients are not meat, fat, salt, or herbs. Spot the starches, the numbers, and the preservatives. Then decide if that is really what you want on your plate or on your children's bread. If this video helped you see the truth hiding inside those cheap sausage packets, tap like so more Australians can protect their barbecue from ultra-processed fillers. If you want more hard-hitting breakdowns that protect your plate, your health and your family from the tricks buried in Australia's food labels, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. That is how we keep making videos the big brands would rather you never watched. Now tell me in the comments, which sausage surprised you the most today? The Coles trays, the Woolworths traditional, or the Fundraiser sausages full of additives? And what is the first swap you are going to make? Fewer sausages, better sausages, or a proper butcher sausage night once a week instead of 3 nights of mystery meat?